Hello, this is Nathan, better known as CrazyhermitDM, and this is my podcast, The Hermit's Homebrew. Joining me today is Brent from Lang Mini Studios and Chase, better known as Kilk, as well as Sam and Connor from Rolling with Story, as we talk about Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop gaming. Today we have Sam and Connor joining us from Rolling with Story. If anyone that's been paying attention on our social medias or at least on YouTube and some of the things I've been sharing on YouTube as well as a couple of other sites, I joined their podcast, and with me, Chase's, and Brent's campaign home game ending here in less than a half dozen sessions, I felt it just fit together perfectly. Just to kind of get started, like, how did you guys, I don't think it was ever talked about when I was on your guys' things, like, how did you guys get started?
It's a really good question. So we have always been playing D&D together, really enjoying that, really love talking about D&D conceptually, not just talking about, oh, we did this in this episode, but conceptually why the game works this way, the choices you make as a DM, so on. We actually have another project on the go at the moment, which sort of spawned this, which is we are developing our own TTRPG. But to do that and to kind of popularize that before we attempt any sort of crowdfunding or funding elsewhere, we thought, well, let's do a podcast, at which point we realized podcasting is extremely fun and is an awesome hobby. So it's actually a whole thing unto itself, which we're really, really enjoying. So that was how we initially got in, but I'm completely hooked now. I've got the bug. I love podcasting. Have you got anything to add to that, Connor? I don't know.
Yeah, it's, I listened to the sound of my own voice. I loved it so much, and now we're just here can't stop, basically, I guess.
Ours started just because, like, every single session we ended up just talking for probably about 30 to 45 minutes after each thing about how we're doing and just like random subjects that were going on. And then Chase, because he's into esports and works at a college, he had a student that they were audio editing and with social media. I was trying to understand the forever changing Instagram, TikTok algorithm, and they were going to help me with that. And then it ended up turning in just a podcast. And then it evolved from there and took off 15, 16 months ago now.
Yeah.
And we're clearing 80 episodes.
That's really cool.
Funny you should say
really cool.
you like hearing your own voice, Connor. My wife watched or listened to the first episode, and she said, "Who's the third guy talking?" And I go, "That's me." And she goes, "No, that's not your voice." I went, "No, that's me." She's like, "I can't listen to this. You sound so weird." Yeah, and so she's listened to the first episode. None of the others.
Wow, my wife's
79 left unwatched.
Yeah, it's like, all right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
At least go like the videos and start them for
Yeah, I
30
know,
seconds.
right? At least give us the like
Yeah.
and mute it or something.
Yeah, immediately
Yeah,
on.
for
Give us the
sure,
watch
for
time,
sure.
please.
Or the volume at
Sometimes
one, whatever you need. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think every great RPG adventure deserves a grand finale. I mean, we were raised on that. You guys are maybe a little bit younger than the rest of us. We're all 40 years old and born within a month of each other, which we didn't figure out till actually we were on the podcast.
Yeah.
And like, we grew up on Return of the Jedi. We grew up on Lord of the Rings. We always had that big capstone finale. So that was all our kind of examples of how to, end an epic story, especially fantasy or sci-fi. That last hurrah that kind of ties everything in. Players are rooting for the resolution as well as the viewers if you're watching a movie. So the finale should feel like a conclusion. How does it end? You crave that resolution, or I guess we crave that resolution in our fiction and in our games. By finale time, I think the story's big conflicts are on the table. A good finale lets the people at the table confront the major antagonist and then gives them some emotional release. For instance, like Breaking Bad, Walter White. Spoiler for anyone listening, skip ahead 30 seconds, but he dies. I remember watching...
I can't skip ahead, Nathan. I can't skip ahead.
I remember watching that and not liking it at first, but it definitely grew on me as time went on. This had to happen, but you grew attached to the character, unfortunately. Resolving those threads, though, like with D&D and TTRPGs just in general, I know, like in your guys' campaign you mentioned on your episode, you guys killed magic off in one setting.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, that did happen. Connor, as the DM who made that creative choice, do you want to?
Yeah.
That's that.
Okay. So there's like this archetype of fantasy is always magic was once really great and now is fading out, or magic is all but gone and we're only dealing with the dregs. Like it's like two archetypes of fantasy that happens a lot. I went for the Lord of the Rings. The magic is slowly, you once had Morgoth, but now you've got Sauron, and now it's, once he's defeated, magic starts to fade away. This was the third campaign in the same world. We've been playing this for 2 years a campaign, so 6 years in this one world. We've been playing it forever. We needed something fresh, and I just needed that way of just really finishing it off, putting the bow on it, and I thought, I want the kind of Frodo, kind of like, it's all done, but the world has still changed kind of fundamentally. And at the end, the big bad was a kind of messianic figure, but had been corrupted and eventually killed the primordial god of magic, Magni, the four-fingered king. And he was the primordial god of magic. Magic was made from his little finger. And killing that god and absorbing him made him the antithesis of magic. So even when the players were fighting him, to kill him was actually also to kill their own magical nature and therefore lose all their power, basically. So it had a really nice crunch point at the end of it being, we have to beat the big bad, but actually if we beat the big bad, this kind of whimsy, this magic that the world had also will fade as well.
I think I brought up on that episode, because you guys killed magic and kind of ended that setting, and it's like, why didn't you just kind of Game of Thrones it and jump ahead 50 years and magic's returned? And why? And that's the Dungeon Master brain in me.
Or just keep going and run it like a Conan the Barbarian level. Yeah, to where you've got all these fighters and you get a magic item and he looks at it and he was like, I don't trust magic. This is to throw it.
Wait.
Yeah.
And then you just play the Conan through until you get tech, and then tech becomes magic, and then you slowly just go up into like a sci-fi campaign. Just get all the way, guys.
True.
So did we just connect Conan the Barbarian to Cyberpunk?
Yeah.
It's D&D, man.
You can go anywhere with this.
That's true.
This episode's been brought to you by... In the age of sagas and songs, don't let your next TTRPG be left to the Norns alone. Let the fate of your character be carved in runes and cast in metal, liquid core, or prismatic glass. Let the players of your table wield dice worthy of Odin, Thor, Loki, and yes, Heimdall. Heimdall dice worthy of guarding the Bifrost with. Claim the glory of Valhalla with HeimdallDice.com. Heimdall Dice, the official Nordic dice of the Hermit's Homebrew podcast. Do you guys let your players, like, those type of, like, your finales, because you guys have obviously done a couple, do you let your players narrate their monologues or do the ending yourself, or has that ever backfired by letting them?
Yeah, so in the latest campaign that we had, Connor was very happy to go, okay, guys, so this is how the world's ending, but what's your bookend for your character? How do you end it? My character, his whole thing was killing the big bad. That was his whole revenge thing. He was from a people that had been essentially cursed. Like, the first curse was done to his people. The big bad was the former king of his people, but they were like the sort of waifs and strays of their society that got abandoned by him. So we hated him the most. We killed him, and the madness of the curse earlier on had claimed loads of people from my race called the Ashen, but they'd claimed my wife and child. So my character was a monk who'd spent 300 years in a monastery, basically praying away the curse of madness, essentially, and just like meditating to just get away from it. Left the monastery, gets in all the fights, is getting more mad and more mad and more mad. By the end, he's completely cracked. He thinks one of the PCs is his son, who's returned from the dead. It's all got really crazy. And then I decided, well, the best thing for it, and I said this to Connor ahead of time, I was like, what I want to do, if I get the opportunity to end it my way, is he's going to do like a Master Oogway from Kung Fu Panda turn into Cherry Blossom vibe. That's exactly what we did, where I was just like, I'll see you soon, my love. Looked up to the stars and then just oogwayed away.
Nice.
Which was great because I was the PC that ended their life at max power, whereas everyone else declined, whereas he ended on actual peak, which was pretty fun. I was like, I'm not going to fade into it. I'm not going to fade. I'm just going to dip.
I really like that.
it's
It
fun,
gives Maximus and Gladiator vibes to where, yeah, he dies in the end, but he goes sees his wife and son again. So it kind of it feels good.
Yeah, it was good.
I think DMing that end as well, like you said, do you trust your players to like make those monologues? 100%. Like the players, I have a load of theatre kids at my table, so like loads of them just see it as an opportunity to like make everybody cry. And like the moment that Sam's talking there, he left out this stunning monologue where he's in the fight and he's losing his mind, and he turns to the PC and like sees him as his son and does this short monologue as his son, and they like reach out to each other. It was stunning, beautiful. So it depends who you
all cried. Yeah.
Nice.
We all cried.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Definitely, if you got the right people, trust them.
Yeah.
I know, was it in my first campaign in the setting that we're using, it ain't so much a backfire for sure. It was actually Brent's wife that threw out just like this wild curveball at the end of she's this illusionist high elf that she's like, I want to go start this library and just start collecting every bit of lore that the setting has, or at least have one copy of it. And I'm just like, so you just basically become an archfey librarian? And she's like, yes. Don't know where that came from, but yeah, okay, that sounds awesome, yeah.
Sure.
But you left out the part to where she and my character actually hooked up and had a kid. And she goes, I'm going to start this library. I'm going to go do this. By the way, here's our daughter. See you later. And just leaves. And leaving me with our infant daughter.
His character had become the god of justice, or acquired the spark to become, so he delayed ascending to divinity for the first 20 to 30 years to raise the daughter.
Yeah, to make sure she was all right. Then I'm going to go be a god.
And then we later found out in a later campaign that daughter became his like exarch, or his chosen until she passed.
But there was just lawlessness for like 20 or 30 years so he could raise his kid.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. Have you heard of the Wild West?
Right now.
It's kind of like that. The regional governors will be in control. Fear will keep them in line.
Yeah. He's making job security.
Yeah, job security. There you go. Yeah, just a purge planet for like 20 years.
A purge planet. Things like the Wild Ram.
Exactly.
Have you guys like ever ended a campaign on a bad note though, like TPK or a bittersweet one where not everyone survived?
Been close to TPK. I've been close.
Yeah.
And campaign 2. What were you going to say about campaign 2?
I was going to say campaign 2. So we could never come up with super cool names for the first 3 campaigns we played, so we genuinely just numbered them. So Connor's first 3 campaigns are campaign 1, 2, and 3. I wish we had better names and more descriptive names for them, but that is what we call them. Campaign 2.
I think that down. We need campaign names.
I think everybody does that because that's how what we call ours. It's just by numbers.
Yeah. Genuinely, like 3 episodes from the end, one of like the starting PCs died in like a horrendous boss fight.
Ooh.
Because we went on this basically string where we just reached we were playing epic fantasy, so we reached a level of power level where the only fights that were worth doing were fighting gods essentially. So we were just every 3 days we'd kill a god. That was basically where we were at. We were just on this complete conveyor belt of just the nastiest boss would turn up. They dish insane damage on us, and we kill him. But then we fought one that he had this absolutely completely busted mechanic. I want you to try and take your minds out of 5th edition because we were well beyond the realms of the constraints of 5th edition. Basically, he had this ability where you dealt him damage throughout the turn, and he had this bar that would fill up with all of the damage you dealt. And then he had an attack. If he hit with it, he'd deal that much damage to one person. So, and we were all like level 18, 19 at this point. So he hit the paladin for like 1,100 damage and just completely deleted him. It was insane. we did kill this guy. We did kill him. We did get him, but like, yeah, that was, and he sliced the paladin down. But the paladin, in a similar sort of vibe, we'd all sort of reached a point where we were either becoming gods or we were going to become them or something like that. And he was at that point this archangel, and he got smoked down by the boss. And then, rather than die, he ascended. So he got to stay in the campaign, and then the character, the person whose character that was, then took a new character who was basically the champion of his old character, who was the god, which was very, very cool. So there was a thread running through where it very much felt like he never fully died. But that's sort of the way I'd say. You got anything else to add on that, Connor? I think that was kind of.
I think it's good to bring that up because that was really difficult to deal with. Like that was somebody who'd played this character for like 2 years, nearly 2 years. Their character dies, and then they have to pick up a new character for genuinely like 3 episodes. So that was really tough. And a similar thing had happened to the same player. They're a very gung ho player in the last campaign. So it was this kind of like returning motif of their very late level character dying and then having to make a new one. And that's tough, but you just I'm in that mindset of like you have to kind of keep the promises of the damage. You have to keep if you back up, people lose trust in
it would have cheapened it. It would have cheapened it big time. If you'd gone, oh, I'm just going to Deus Ex Machina, he doesn't die, like that would have sucked. The best part was there was an inherent risk where we, like as Brendan Lee Mulligan says, we gamble with stories in D&D.
Oh yeah,
and that was we rolled the dice, we rolled bad. He took the story away. that was what happened, and it was awesome.
And that's have any TPKs?
I actually did. One of my very first campaigns. This is early 2000s, just in college and everything. I had my first group. We never really did large campaigns. We would probably do maybe 20 sessions and then get bored and then move on to another setting or another campaign or whatever. Yeah. Well, we were probably 5th or 6th level, and we were going out. This is 3.5 now. So we went out to this cave, and we were searching through it all, and we stumbled upon an area that the DM didn't want us to go yet. And it's kind of like when our tank gets destroyed, turn 1 by 2 dire bears. We kind of sit there and go, we're not supposed to be here. We need to leave.
Run away!
And we try to leave. And everybody but one went down to 0 hit points. And I was playing a sorcerer. So I was playing a sorcerer at the time. And I went down to 0. I rolled my constitution save and I stabilized. Nice. Okay. Everybody else is dead. Why did I stabilize? Why did you have me roll that? And my DM just kind of grins and goes, we're going to keep going. We're going to roll with this. My character comes to with his ankles tied together, still covered in blood. And there's a glowing bear statue at the end of this hallway. The rope starts pulling, and my character's being dragged towards this glowing bear statue. And I'm trying to cast spells. The statue's immune. It's got anti-magic field. Everything I'm trying to do isn't working. And so I had one last thing to do before I got to this bear. And I look at all the other players, and they're kind of laughing behind their hands and shaking their heads. Not going to help me whatsoever. And I do one last spell, and I cast it on the rope. I cast the fire spell on the rope to burn it off. Yes, I didn't want to take damage because I had just stabilized, so I didn't want to die from self-inflicted wounds. But I lit the rope on fire, and I'm pulling on it, and I break the rope, try to crawl away, but the bear statue animates and kills me. And so that's how it ended. And I'm looking at everybody, and we're all just kind of shrugging. And I look at the DM, and I go, what was I supposed to do? And he goes, these were druids. This was their patron deity. I went, okay. And he goes, why didn't you ask for help? I didn't know I could. I didn't know that was a thing. This is like my third game of D&D ever. I have no idea that's a thing. And he kind of shrugged and he went, well, now you know. All right, next campaign.
Lesson learned.
Yeah, okay.
Lesson the hard way.
Yeah, well, yeah. Learn the hard way. Absolutely. Clint, you're the man. Shout out to my buddy Clint. He's a Red Moon Medicine Show out of New Orleans, Louisiana.
And
Shout out, Clint. You're
Drive
an OG.
Through RPG as well. He has a bunch of adventures.
Yeah. He did Don't Walk in Winterwood is his a homemade game. People can go and buy it on Drive Through RPG. I'm not going to shell on him.
I've
He gave
had
me PTSD.
I've played for 16 years. I've actually had 4.
Four
Uh,
TPKs.
if
DMing all of these.
3 of the 4.
Because if you are Nathan,
Oh.
3 of the 4. You like killing players, dude. Okay. I like it.
well,
I like
Those
it.
are low numbers.
Top of the
I feel like
denominator.
that's a low number for 16 years. I'm like, the game
Yeah,
in me
but
is like
yeah.
only 4?
One was the 4th edition of Tomb of Horrors, where they had an actual storyline with it, which you ran through the realms.
But it's Tomb of Horrors, so you're supposed
Yes.
to die.
I
Yeah,
played
that's
a
what's supposed to happen.
I played a DMPC that was aiding the players. That was a paladin versus the undead, sucked into Acerak's soul gem teeth. So that was a horrible ending for him, but it was so story. I can't be mad. It's a bragging point. I've had where they were sailing on a ship and a giant kraken just took them all down because they just rolled horrible.
new campaign, guys. Kraken
Yeah.
just
Hey, Kraken just killed you. Okay.
The third one I had in mind, but it just slipped, unfortunately. It was actually the second campaign of this living setting that we had, and it built up. Well, at least in my dungeon map with the overseer that we've been talking about, it built him up even more in my head, at least, because these players played for 30 sessions, and the group was dissolving personally as well as in character as well, because we didn't play after that for about a year, and then got other people involved, a whole new group, but fought this aberration wave down by this kind of orc settlement. The orcs helped them. They tried to fight, but it turned into what the Long Night should have been in Game of Thrones, a much more bloodbath.
no.
Yeah.
The
And
orcs
it just-
probably love that, though.
Yeah.
They're winning, even if they're losing. I'm telling you. As long as orcs are fighting, that's all they care about.
But
Oh,
2
wow.
people out of the 6 survived that, and I go, guys, winter's coming here, and you guys are 1,000 miles away from civilization. You guys are going to have to wait out the winter here. And then after that was the way that session ended, and we're going to come back to it, but the campaign ended, so it ended that they have to wait out the winter.
they just died in the cold.
Yeah, exactly.
Frozen death.
Oh, geez.
Undying Warlock and a half-elf bard that
Walk into a
player.
bar.
Yeah.
You left the bard alive?
Well, it was
What the
half elf. It was half elf with how many luck things they had, but those two, that player hated that bard character. Like, not the player, but they hated that bard character so much. I was like, I'm so sorry. And then the 4th one I've talked about on the podcast, where I was doing Adventures League. We're supposed to do this caravan thing where the ant kegs or these giant ants attack, and the DM was rolling out in the open, so I know he wasn't cheating. He wasn't rolling behind a screen. He rolled like a god, and we all rolled horrible. And it ended up with the party basically dying. And I survived and one other person out of the 7 to 8 people at the table. And the way that Dungeon Master described it is like, you guys escape, but the last thing you hear is your party's bodies being dragged off by these ants into the tunnels while they scream.
Oh,
Oh, God.
Dang, he was solo leveling before solo leveling.
I know, right? So they were going to be like Alien, where they have a chest burster come out, or
I have no clue.
however on kegs were produced.
If it was me DMing, possibly just because I love horror, but you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, different campaign chains, I think, call for different types of finale notes, depending. Like, you guys went high magic with yours, so it caused a Critical Role 3 campaign where they call back everybody to fight this dude that's going to end civilization unless the gods step down.
I mean,
Or-
in 5e, after like level 15, aren't you basically a demigod yourself?
That's the way they discussed it in the
I get
Dungeon
that.
Master's
Or-
Guide.
Yeah, tier 4.
Yeah, it's crazy. So and once you get to level 20, like
Oh,
it makes plate making combat hard on the DM, right? Because anything can happen. I mean, and where we are right now, like Nathan, I have no idea how you're going to do it, because I've got a monkey's paw in my hand, I've got all kinds of crazy things happening. Like it makes it almost to a point where it is possible for it to just not win.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have listened to much of our game discussion podcast, but I trust Chase completely that he ain't gonna like mechanically break the game. He will story wise. I know that, and that's no problem.
Yeah,
I can heal from that, and that's a challenge for me.
I've had that monkey's paw since we were, I don't know, like level 5 or something, and I've had 3 wishes on it, and I'm down to 1, and we're like 2 years later. I want it to mean something when I do it to the story.
yeah.
I don't want to just be like, I wish for
The
Overlord to be
monkey's
dead. All right, off we go, guys.
Yeah.
yeah the monkey's paws from the Twilight Zone, which is the monkey paw that gives wishes, and when you wish, it crinkles down a finger.
Yeah.
But the
Faustian. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, every time he makes a wish, and I've told him that from the get-go, you can make a wish on it, but there will always be a negative condition with it, no matter what. Like you
They
brought,
had a Simpsons episode with the monkey's paw.
yes, and that's another reason that I got introduced to it.
He used this final wish to get like a turkey sandwich or something, and he tried to word it so that it was the best turkey sandwich ever. And then at the end, the closing sequence is him biting into it and be like, "The bread is dry."
With Lord of the Rings, though, like the heroes win decisively. Many of the loose ends are tied up unless you're really falling for some fan theories.
Maybe to the movie's detriment.
Yeah.
To be fair, at the end of all of that, watching the hour of everyone just saying goodbye to everybody over and over in different places was probably unnecessary.
I know.
At least in the movie.
Yeah. Return of the Jedi tied up a lot of loose ends. I think, other than maybe like you don't see Palpatine's body, which I'm surprised, Disney didn't take advantage of, but that way.
Hey, somehow he returned.
Yes, somehow.
Yeah.
In Legends lore, it's because he had a bunch of clones made of
Yeah.
himself in case he died. They
Dude,
just weren't as strong in the Force as he was.
Out of, I guess, instead of just the 3 of us, out of the 5 of us here, like, what do you guys think? What pop culture finale do you think nailed it? Like, or maybe totally whiffed? What one do you either hate the most or like the most? I'll let you choose between the two. And what can DMs learn from that?
I'll go first. I'll break the ice.
Yeah.
For me, one that comes to mind is Star Trek: The Next Generation. The very last episode, at the last minute or two, after all the shenanigans are done and everything, Picard gives an order of where to go, and he sits down and he looks around the bridge, and he looks at all of the characters. All of the main characters get a couple of seconds to where they turn and look at him, and he kind of looks around and he grins, and then he looks up at the screen and says, "Engage." And that's where it is. To where it's like, that's so good, because a show it's all about exploration and all of that, it didn't end. It's just we stopped telling their stories. They can go out there and do whatever they want. It's just we're not going to show you what they are. And I think that's really good. That was really good for that one, at least.
That is a good one.
Chase, you got one?
I would say, and maybe this is probably just because I really like the movie, I love the way that the movie Gladiator ended.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just,
Great.
absolutely perfect
Yeah,
ending.
sure.
We got the fact that the bad guy got killed, right?
Yeah.
But at the end, he was also paraded around as the hero, right? Even though he had just killed the Emperor. And, the Emperor's sister was doing they just tied that entire story up so well. because his family had been killed and all this other stuff. I just felt that worked out really well. That was probably my good one. My bad one is probably the same as a lot of people's, right? I mean, Game of Thrones was just a disaster at the end.
Yeah, gosh, you're so right.
Sad.
And if we want to get into like the animated side, Attack on Titan, down the crapper.
I haven't watched the last bit yet. I haven't watched the last bit yet.
It just wasn't. I just wasn't the guy. They had this so cool like pseudo post World War II technology, right? Or World War I technology idea, and like it was really cool. And then at some point, the show just went off the rails.
Yeah.
And
I've watched the end. Yeah, I've watched the end.
I feel they did the same with Death Note. That just went way off.
Yeah, you're hitting both of them. I finished Attack on Titan just to say I finished it. I lost like the buy-in probably mid-season 3. Where I was like, I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah.
But hey, it's the final season. You see how it ends. Okay, I'll watch. And then Death Note. Yeah, to where, I think his light just went off the rails at the end. Lost the plot. Yeah, that one was kind of weak. I agree with both those.
Nothing really jumps to mind for me, which is a bit of a shame. I wish I could continue. But
Really?
The ending of Fight Club's pretty awesome. The ending of Fight Club.
Yes.
Very, very
Okay,
good.
that was
all right.
Good.
All right, here we go.
Yeah, and it finishes on just the most perfect kind of pretty depressing note. Oh, it's just so good. It's so good. Yeah.
Just so like what was the one with Leonardo DiCaprio where he was in the mental institution the whole time?
Shutter Island.
Shutter Island.
Yes, Shutter Island.
Very, very
Really cool too.
Good shout.
Yeah.
And then there was also, if you guys have ever watched Soul Eater, there's a point in the anime where things just turn. And I found out, I'm like, dang, I really love Soul Eater for the first few seasons or whatever. And then the last season was just super goofy. Like, what happened? And then it just ended. They didn't tie up loose ends. They didn't do nothing. They just like left it all. They introduced all these like 12 fighters of death. They just showed you like their silhouettes, never even talked about them again. Like it was wild. And then I just found out is because the manga was still going on, right?
Oh yeah.
But instead of holding and doing like a fluff season like a lot of those shows do, they just full sent it into their own version of what's going to happen. And it was just the weirdest. It didn't follow anything.
They did that with Hellsing, to where the first Hellsing, it ended, and it was a self-made ending, and it was terrible. And it wasn't until years later they did Hellsing Ultimate, which followed the manga more. I think kind of Bogart and stuff. What do you guys think?
I think a lot of people just want what should be considered like a nice proper ending for whatever that character has been through, right? That's why to me Gladiator felt like it closed everything. He succeeded in what he wanted to do, and in the end, he ended up dying and stuff like that. Like that makes sense for his character. That's what I look for when I look at a lot of these stories. Is what's happening, is the way that say they died or they ended the show or they lived, does it make sense for that character?
Yeah.
And I think that was the thing when we talk about Game of Thrones, right? It was just so weird that at the end that she just goes full Mad Queen.
They just needed like 3 more seasons to strengthen that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so fast, and you're like, wait a minute, like this is what she's kind of been railing against the whole time, and like it was just weird. And so it's hard to buy in.
Like nothing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let me just step.
It wasn't even a ramp up. It was just like a ladder. Because she'd lost everyone that she was super close to, but just like it was a ladder climb as opposed to like a natural story ramp up to it.
Yeah.
I did rewatch it, and she does crucify a lot of people before that. There's actually a lot of people she crucifies, and that's a pretty horrendous, what isn't objectively horrendous thing to do. And they were really bad people. But like, she definitely was grey area. But that is in no way me defending it, because I wanted 2 more seasons to actually make that story work. Whereas
it could have been really great.
It just ramped too quick. And like you say, Nathan, it's a ladder, wasn't it? There were distinct jumps where it was like, okay, this episode she's going up another level of crazy, and it just that happened too many times, and you're like, whoa, okay.
Trying to portray her as like the freer, the liberator, right? Like, she was coming to liberate everybody, and throughout the whole show, that's what she did. She picked people up. And just to be like, nah, I'm done with that. Full 180. And I was just like, what are we doing, guys? Like, come on, you could have come up with something better.
They wanted to do Star Wars, though, didn't they?
The best technology I've ever heard with Game of Thrones is, I think it was a Reddit thread or somewhere online, and it was D&D related. Like, the end of Game of Thrones felt like DM was moving away, so he had to wrap up the campaign super quick after setting it up.
Yeah.
That is exactly what happened, isn't it? That is literally what happened.
Pretty much, yeah.
They didn't want to do it, and then they didn't even get the job that they wanted to get.
And as D&D players ourselves, right? As fantasy D&D players is what kind of the genre that I look at it. This is where we pull a lot of our lore and happiness from these eras, these types of shows. Things that have a little bit of magic in them. You know, they have some fantastical monsters, and it's kind of the adventuring party going and doing things in a world that we resonate with. So when we see crappy storytelling ends like that, we're more prone to just start calling that out. I think it more flabbergasts us when we go, I know somebody who makes millions of dollars made that decision.
Yeah, like, when my DM that sits across the table from me makes up better stories on the fly, or sitting down on the toilet on their phone, makes up a better story. Come on.
Either that or give me 5 minutes real quick. I gotta go get a drink, and then how do I handle this?
Yeah.
And we touched on those points, like the player epilogue. I feel you have to give the players somewhat what they want. It's unfortunate when, like you were mentioning, the player loses a character they've played for multiple years and have to play only like a half dozen sessions at the end of the campaign. That sucks. But I mean, if you've played for so long with this game, that happens, unfortunately. And if you've read books or you've read movies, it happens. Like, they kill off characters that you just don't understand the reason why, or other than for shock value. Hopefully you don't have a DM that's just trying to, hey, for shock value, you're dead.
You have to sacrifice NPC, but not with PCs. I don't think you do that with PCs.
I've lost 3 NPCs in our campaign. I'm just pointing that out.
I have done one of my PCs pretty dirty with this. I have a creature called Growl.
Oh, God.
Which is basically the Faust.
That's a good reaction.
He's real PTSD vibes with him. 3 campaigns worth.
Okay.
It was iconic for the campaign. He was iconic.
He was a bit of an iconic. It's this guy. Oh, I want to free. Was he trying to free your character, Sam, from the Never Never or something? He was like, oh, bring back. I can't remember what it was, but bring back someone. And then Grell was like, cool, I'll do that. And then he was like a Death Knight, and he had like a Death Knight servant who was like called Lieldren, who was like his right-hand man, was doing everything, running his kind of like all of his day-to-days. And Grell just snaps him out of existence. And I just said to all the PCs, no one remembers this person. No one remembers them. They're gone from.
He got reverse hydrad?
Yeah, he got reverse hydrad, and it was so sad because it was the thing he loved the most was this one guy, and he literally had to just be like, "Where's Leodrin?" And everyone would be like, "Who?
Who's that guy?
It was
It was savage.
Was he the only one that remembered him?
Yeah, he was the only one.
No!
It was tough. It was tough.
And then a new guy showed up who was like the replacement Leldrin because he was and he just hated this new guy.
Yeah, he hated him.
Treated him so
Leldrin.
How dare you stand where he stood?
Yeah, literally.
The big bad for our campaign, or the original big bad, was this kind of arch Valkyrie character that was actually the previous campaign with Kilk or Chase, and he was there for most of it. But the most tragic part about her backstory is that she defied Odin in our setting, because Valkyries come from Odin. Like, they both kind of did the typical Christian angels rebel, get cast down from heaven because they're Azamar. She rebelled against Odin with this person because she fell in love with one of the characters from last campaign, and they're also a fallen Valkyrie. Halfway through that campaign, I don't have this kind of bad, like, big baddie there that's the big bad for this campaign. But halfway through the campaign, that character, in order to gain knowledge from the Well of Mimur, which is this well that grants you +2, like a wisdom buff, basically, in D&D mechanical terms. It's where Odin sold his eye off in Norse mythology. She sold the memory of the person off in her, like in her head, just to get that wisdom buff. And then me being the horrible DM I am, 3 to 4 sessions later, this character comes in. Fully still in love with that character, and that character don't remember her.
That,
Nice.
you sold your memory of me? Really?
It was really well played because I came in later on in that campaign as a player. So I came in and this stuff's already happening. So when we ran into Wrathgriff, just the idea, and you guys kind of explained the situation to me, and I was like, oh wow, this lady would be really mad if she basically fell with her lover and gave up her divinity for this, only for that person to not even know who she was, and is now engaged and got married to somebody else.
Yeah.
She's like, don't you remember we fell together? Like, we did this, we did that. And the person's like, the character's just like, get away from me. Like, who are you?
It's the gif of that monkey doing the side eye, just like, what?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
That's mad.
Which pushed this chick to, become a warlock of the Overseer.
Yeah.
Nice.
Hey, tabletop gamers. Thank you for watching this episode of the Hermit's Homebrew. We come out with new episodes every Wednesday. Remember to like, subscribe, and share with your friends as we continue to level up and grow.